This is the FPL Draft Zone, your fantasy team's best signing of the season.
Nottingham Forest edge closer to survival as Hudson-Odoi puts the blades to the sword. Defensive midfielders in the ascendancy as Rice, Rodri, Yates and Danilo return. And are Wolves the beachiest on the beach side so far? Hello and welcome to the FPL Draft Zone, a podcast all about Draft FPL. I'm Dom Crofts, thanks for being here. And today we're going to be looking back at Gameweek 36 with one game left to play, and then looking ahead to the penultimate game week of the season, Gameweek 37, which is a double game week for 6 teams and a defining game week for lots of other clubs as well. Coming up, we'll have all the usual bits, heroes, waiver wants, and much, much more. But first, let's take a look at all the results from this game week with one match left to play. And it all began on Friday night with all the glitz and all the glamour of Luton against Everton. A massive game for Luton though, and it finished Luton 1, Everton 1. Dominic Calvert-Lewin scoring his 7th goal of the season for the Toffees, but Adebayo equalising for Luton in his first start since game week 24. And then on Saturday, the lunchtime game saw Arsenal taking on Bournemouth. The full-time score at the Emirates was Arsenal 3, Bournemouth 0. Before this one, Bournemouth had picked up the joint second most points in the league since March the 1st. So if the league had started on March the 1st, Bournemouth would be second, level with Manchester City and only behind Arsenal. But the Gunners were excellent in this one. Declan Rice, Leo Trossard and Kai Havertz returning, and another clean sheet as well for the home side. And then there were 3 3:00 kickoffs. Brentford 0, Fulham 0, a deadly dull match, but Brentford are now 5 games unbeaten at the G-Tech, and Bumo hit the bar for them. Reguilon was back in the bonus points as well, and Flecken ended up with a 10-point haul. Burnley 1, Newcastle United 4. Isaac and Wilson among the scorers in this one for Newcastle. Another return for Anthony Gordon, and a massive game at the bottom took place at Bramall Lane. It ended Sheffield United 1, Nottingham Forest 3. Ben Brereton Diaz on target for the Blades, but Callum Hudson-Odoi with 2 goals, and Forest are now on the cusp of safety. And then the late kickoff on Saturday saw the champions Manchester City take on Wolves. Wolves won the reverse fixture earlier in the season, but no such luck this time around. It finished Manchester City 5, Wolves 1. Erling Haaland scoring 4 goals, Rodri with another return as well. And Wolves have now only won 1 of their last 8 games, and that was against lowly Luton. Sunday's matches saw Brighton beat Aston Villa 1-0, a first win and a first goal for Brighton in 7 games. João Pedro got the only goal of the game. He missed a penalty as well, as Aston Villa's race for the Champions League takes a bit of a dent. Chelsea 5, West Ham 0. Chelsea's good run of form continued with Nicholas Jackson getting 2 goals and an assist. It is now just 1 defeat in 12 for the Blues, and it's 3 clean sheets in their last 5 games. Quite important news when you think about it, because they double in game week 37. And then the final game of the day was at Anfield. It finished Liverpool 4, Spurs 2. Elliot, Gakpo, Robertson and Salah on target for Liverpool. Jurgen Klopp's side winning only their 2nd game in their last 6 matches. Spurs have now lost their last 4 games in a row and have conceded 13 goals in those 4 games, but they do have a double in game week 37, so do not shed those Spurs assets just yet. There is one match left to play this game week. It's between Crystal Palace and Manchester United on Monday night. Manchester United have just 1 win in their last 6 games and 2 wins in their last 9. Crystal Palace, well, they're unbeaten in their last 4 and have won 3 of those games. So that is the story of game week 36 so far, but who shone bright like a diamond and who stunk the place up like a dog with diarrhea? It's time for winners and losers.
The FPL Draft Zone, winners and losers.
Our first winner this week is Callum Hudson-Odoi. The former Chelsea winger scored twice in Forest's crucial win over Sheffield United. He's now got 7 goals for the season and 2 assists as well. Forest were desperate for a win against Sheffield United, and Hudson-Odoi was the difference maker for Nuno Espirito Santo's side. It wasn't long ago that he was being linked with a move to Bayern Munich when he was at Chelsea, and he showed signs of that class on Saturday afternoon. He finished the day with a 15-point return and with a game against his former club Chelsea to come, and then a final day match against Burnley. There could be more points in the near future for Hudson-Odoi. Another winner this week is Bruno Guimaraes of Newcastle United. We could have gone for Alex Isak again after another goal and an assist. Anthony Gordon returned as well, but Bruno is the man who is really stepping it up for Newcastle. He's now got 3 goals and an assist in his last 5 games. He is doing everything in his power to get Newcastle back into Europe, or, depending on your point of view, doing everything in his power to play for a move to another club. Guimaraes is rumoured to have a release clause for 1 month only at the end of the season, where he can go to another club for a set fee. However, whether it's that case or the case that he wants to get Newcastle back into Europe, either way, if you have him in your draft team right now, you are winning big. As are managers who own Nicholas Jackson, because Chelsea's striker put West Ham to the sword at Stamford Bridge, finishing the game with 2 goals and an assist and ending the game week with 16 points. Jackson has now got 7 returns in his last 5 games. He's got 13 goals and 6 assists for the season as well. And despite having a right ropey season, Chelsea are now up to 7th, and they are only 6 points off 5th place with 3 games to go. So European football could still be on the agenda next season for Mauricio Pochettino's side. Jackson is also now the 7th highest scoring striker in the entire game. So if you do own him in draft, then you have got him at the right time, with Chelsea now only playing teams 10th and below from now until the end of the season. Another winner this week, Takahiro Tomiyasu. Getting an Arsenal defender into your draft side is not easy at this time of the season, but Tomiyasu's injury problems all season long mean that he will have been available in a lot of draft leagues for large chunks of the season, and if you manage to get him in or around game week 34, then you will have benefited from 2 clean sheets in 3 games from the Japanese international. And if you're in a head-to-head league and you're up against a rival manager without Arsenal defensive coverage, well, that could make all the difference in those matchups. As for losers, Wolverhampton Wanderers assets get a big old mention this week. They delivered a nothing performance at the Etihad in their 5-1 defeat to Manchester City. Hwang did get a consolation goal for Gary O'Neill's side, but that was all they could muster. They look like they've given up on the season. They look like they're on the beach. They look like they cannot be trusted in draft or any other fantasy format. And with games against Crystal Palace and Liverpool still to come, I don't fancy them to get another point this campaign. And not far behind them on the beach stakes are Burnley, who were well beaten at home to Newcastle United. They've played well recently, but this was certainly a step too far for Vincent Kompany's side. And for the second week running, we have to mention Spurs' assets as well, specifically their defensive assets, because it's now 9 games since Spurs kept a clean sheet, and that was very much a one-off, because they have only kept that 1 clean sheet in their last 18 matches. Spurs do double in 37, but in terms of that defensive side of their play, you are well off best avoiding. And West Ham deserve some criticism this week as well. They make it into the losers list too. A 5-0 defeat at Chelsea just a week after getting a draw at home to Liverpool. David Moyes is expected to leave the club in the summer, but his farewell tour is not going too well, and it certainly didn't go too well in West London. The Hammers have now conceded 14 goals in their last 4 matches. So if you're going big on West Ham between now and the end of the season, make sure it's midfielders and attackers you pick up and not their defensive assets. So that's some of the divine and some of the dismal from Game Week 36, but who channeled their inner Messi and stood taller than all the rest? It's time to reveal our fantasy hero of the week.
Hero of the Week.
And this week's hero is Erling Haaland. The Norwegian robot has not had the sort of season he enjoyed in his debut season at the Etihad, but having said that, he has now scored 25 goals this season. He is the league's leading scorer. He has 8 assists as well, and he's got 7 goals in his last 5 league games. Manchester City are now unbeaten in their last 20 league games. They've won 16 of those 20 games, including the last 6 in a row. And with Phil Foden playing so well and drawing so much attention from the opposition, it might just mean there's more joy to come for Haaland in their remaining 3 games of the season. They have Fulham, Spurs and West Ham left to play, all London clubs, and if they win them all, they will be champions again, and Haaland will almost certainly be celebrating another golden boot. And that is why Erling Haaland is our fantasy hero of the week.
Hero of the Week.
Okay, another game week is almost done and dusted, and there are now only 2 game weeks left of the 2023-2024 league season. Game week 37 kicks off on Saturday, the 11th of May, and it is a double game week for half a dozen teams. Those teams are Spurs, Manchester City, Brighton, Chelsea, Manchester United, and Newcastle United. We will get to them in a minute, but first let's take you through all the matches we have to look forward to in Game Week 37. The lunchtime kickoff is on Saturday. It's between Fulham and Manchester City. City are closing in on another league title, but Arsenal fans will be hoping Fulham can cause a shock at Craven Cottage. They have beaten Spurs and Arsenal at home already, but the reverse fixture at the Etihad was barely a contest. City running out 5-1 winners. Then at 3 o'clock, it's Bournemouth against Brentford. Bournemouth have had an excellent season since November. They are one of the top 6 teams in terms of points since then, and they are strong at home. Manchester City were the last team to win their way back in Game Week 26, and since then, they've picked up 13 points from a possible 15 at the Vitality. It's Everton against Sheffield United at Goodison Park. Everton have been in good form of late. They've won their last 4 matches at home without conceding a goal. Sheffield United are playing for pride, but their away form is predictably ropey. They've conceded 9 goals in their last 2 trips away from Bramall Lane. Newcastle are taking on Brighton at St James's Park. Newcastle are still very much in the mix for 6th place, and Brighton, until this week at least, were in complete freefall. They've won only 1 of their last 12 trips on the road, and that was against Sheffield United, so don't expect much from them in the North East. It's Spurs taking on Burnley in North London. Spurs take on a resolute Burnley, hoping to resurrect their Champions League hopes, which are hanging by a thread. And then at the London Stadium, it's West Ham taking on Luton. Luton go there desperately needing a win to keep their survival hopes alive in what is expected to be David Moyes' last home game in charge of the Hammers. It's Wolves against Crystal Palace at Molineux. It's been a good season for Wolves under Gary O'Neill, despite a disappointing last few weeks. Palace, well, they've picked up under Oliver Glasner and will be looking to extend their good run of form. And then in the late kickoff on Saturday, it's Nottingham Forest taking on Chelsea. A big game for Forest as they look to cement their place in the top flight next season. Chelsea have improved, though. They are in the mix for 6th place, and they have lost only 1 of their last 12 league games. On Sunday, it's Manchester United against Arsenal at Old Trafford. Erik ten Hag has been banging on about the game at the Emirates in a few of his press conferences this season, so there will be an edge to this one. United will be looking to end Arsenal's title challenge, but they would be handing the title to Manchester City if they took points off the Gunners. Then on Monday, it's Aston Villa against Liverpool. Villa will need a win in their race for the Champions League. Liverpool, well, they've won just 1 of their last 4 games on the road, so they will be looking to stop the rot as well. Tuesday is when the fixtures involving double game week sides begins. It's Spurs against Manchester City. City haven't won away at Spurs in the league since 2018, and Spurs have won the last 4 of these contests by an aggregate score of 6-0. I can't believe that stat. And then the final 2 fixtures of the game week take place on Wednesday. Brighton against Chelsea. Being on the coast means Brighton haven't had to go too far to get to the beach, and recent results before this weekend suggests that's where they are, but they'll be looking to make it 2 wins on the spin against an informed Chelsea side. And then we finish with Manchester United against Newcastle United, a huge game in the race for 6th place. So who is going to come out on top in that one? So those are the fixtures we have to look forward to, but which players should we be targeting for our teams? It's time for Waiver Wants.
The FPL Draft Zone. Waiver Wants.
Okay, so we went big on double game week 37 last week, so we will not go super big on those double game week fixtures this week. But just a reminder that Newcastle and Chelsea are the pick of the sides for the double in our opinion, and nothing this weekend has made us change our minds on that one. Some players, though, have returned to both squads of late who are worth considering, so we'll mention those now. Eddie Howe has said that Nick Pope, Miguel Almiron and Joe Linton are back in training, so they could be involved in game week 37. Of those, Nick Pope seems like the best pickup if you're in need of a keeper, or if you want to get some Newcastle defensive coverage in your side. Kieran Trippier is close to a return as well. If he's been released by a rival manager, he could be worth snapping up. Chelsea, well, they've got a few returning players, Levi Colwill and Christopher Nkunku among them, and given Chelsea's upturn in form, they could well be worth considering, although Nkunku's injury record is obviously a cause for concern. He did get minutes off the bench in their win this weekend. Noni Madueke is a must waiver if he is still on the waivers. And Malo Gusto got some minutes off the bench this weekend as well, so he would be a very good signing, especially when you consider Chelsea's defensive record has started to improve. The situation at Spurs has also changed with Timo Werner's injury, meaning the likes of Richarlison and Kulusevski are likely to get substantial minutes. Richarlison got a goal and an assist against Liverpool. Of the other teams to double, Brighton remain a hard avoid for me despite winning this weekend. Manchester United fixtures are pretty tricky, and Manchester City's key assets would of course already be taken, although you might get some joy with the likes of Grealish or Doku. Now, normally when it comes to a double game week, we would urge caution. We would remind you not to rip up your team for the sake of 1 week. But given the situation and where we are at in the season with just 1 week to go, it's a slightly different situation to normal. And if you look at the games that the double game week teams play in game week 37, and then you look at the matches that they play in game week 38, most of them have very nice fixtures from now until the end of the season. Chelsea finish at home to Bournemouth, so if you can get a few of their assets in, you can certainly hold them until the end of the season. Newcastle end with a game at Brentford, which is also not the worst fixture in the world. Spurs are away at Sheffield United, so another good fixture there. And Manchester United and Brighton, well, they meet each other at the Amex, where you would fancy goals from both teams, but probably not clean sheets. The only other double game week team in 37 is Manchester City, and as always, if you can get any of their players in, you would be mad not to hold on to them. So what I'm saying is if you want to go big with the doublers in 37, you don't really have to worry too much about game week 38, because the fixtures for those teams are decent. So get them in, hold on to them, and improve your chances in game week 37 without it really affecting much for game week 38. However, having said all that, as always, you should not discount the single game week teams just because they only play once. And as usual, in game week 37, there are some good fixtures to look forward to for teams that only play once. Among them, Everton. Everton have a home game against Sheffield United, which is a great fixture and one you just cannot ignore, especially when you consider their excellent home form and their excellent defensive record. They have not conceded at home for some time now. Ben Godfrey and Ashley Young are roots into that back line if the likes of Tarkowski and Branthwaite are taken. So Everton, well worth considering. West Ham's home game against Luton is another tempting fixture to target, especially when you consider how leaky Luton are. It's also likely to be David Moyes' last home game in charge of West Ham, and I'm sure he will want to go out with a win, and hopefully his players will want to do him justice as well. Wolves, well, they've been out of sorts of late. Literally no one fancied them to cause a shock at City as a result, and so it came to pass. So you'd fancy Crystal Palace to cause them more problems at Molineux, and then Arsenal have a must-win game at Manchester United. The Gunners have scored the most goals in the league, and Manchester United's XGC is the 6th worst in the league. So you would fancy Arsenal to do some bits there. Wolves, Burnley, West Ham, Sheffield United and Luton are the only teams in the entire league that have given up more chances than Manchester United. So if there is any way, and I know it's not easy, but if there is any way of getting into that Arsenal front line, then you would be foolish not to do so if there is availability on your waivers. Now, in terms of player specifics, we're going to go through position by position this week, and we're obviously focusing on diamonds in the rough here. Players who are likely to still be available on your waivers rather than those who will have been drafted in round one way back in August and have never been available on the waivers. So these are diamonds in the rough, players who can hopefully make a difference to your side, but who are not the sort of players that would be first picks on draft night. So let's start with goalkeepers. We've mentioned him already. Nick Pope is the obvious pickup here. He's back in training for Newcastle. He will want to prove his fitness ahead of the Euros. And Newcastle have been a far more defensively solid side when he has been in the sticks. Newcastle have that additional fixture as well, which makes him a very appealing option. He's played 14 games this season for Newcastle. They only lost 4 of those 14 games. And in that time, Pope kept 6 clean sheets. So Nick Pope is a recommendation for us this week. Muric at Burnley is what you want from a goalkeeper as well. Someone who picks up points despite conceding goals. He has had a sensational 4 weeks at Burnley. In game week 33, 8 saves, 3 points. In game week 34, 10 saves, 7 points. In game week 35, 9 saves, 8 points. And in game week 36, 7 saves, including a penalty save, and 10 points. So in that time, no clean sheets, but mega hauls. So Muric is worth looking at for the run-in if you need a goalkeeper. I know it can be hard to get your head around the fact that you want to invest in a Burnley goalkeeper, but just look at the stats. Muric is well worth considering. Moving on to defenders, and we're going to start at Newcastle again with Lewis Hall, who is likely to play the rest of the season due to a horrific set of injury problems at the back for the Toon. Fabian Schär is the latest player to be ruled out, with Eddie Howe saying he's unlikely to play again this season. Schär has pretty much said the opposite to his manager, but even so, the likes of Livramento and Hall are likely to play regular minutes between now and the end of the season, especially with the fact that Kieran Trippier's fitness is still in doubt. So if you want to root into that Newcastle back line, you've now got a goalkeeping option and a couple of defensive options as well. Bournemouth defenders are worth looking at again. They're at home to Brentford in game week 37. Senesi has returned big in recent weeks, and Bournemouth have kept 3 clean sheets in their last 7 games. So if you do want a bit of Bournemouth defensive coverage and Senesi's unavailable, you can look at the likes of Adam Smith, Zabani, and Lloyd Kelly, who is back from injury and is starting for the Cherries again. Mark Travers, by the way, is another decent goalkeeper pickup. He's played the last 3 ahead of Neto. He made 6 saves against Arsenal. So if Bournemouth can get a clean sheet, Travers may well pick you up some save points as well. In midfield, Bruno Guimaraes has found his form at the right time. He's got 3 goals and an assist in his last 5 games now. Jacob Murphy is playing lots of minutes for the Toon as well. He got 2 assists against Burnley at the weekend and finished with 10 points. And Sean Longstaff and Elliot Anderson are in that Newcastle starting 11 at the moment as well. Neither are prolific, far from it in fact. But with Brighton and Manchester United in their next 2, I do think both will have chances to return in game week 37. Dwight McNeil, he gets his usual shout out on this show with Everton taking on Sheffield United at Goodison Park. He got returns against Liverpool and Forest in game week 34. And in the games he hasn't returned in, against Brentford in game week 35, he had an XGI of 0.63, so was hugely unlucky not to get anything from that game. And this week against Luton, he had an XGI of 0.30. So again, it could have been a very different story for Dwight McNeil. Well worth getting in, especially when you think Everton are playing Sheffield United at home. Spurs midfielders, well, they'll be in demand as well. They double in 37, and one of those games is against Burnley. Richarlison is likely to play up front for them, especially after his impact off the bench against Liverpool, a goal and an assist for him. He could still be available on some waivers given his recent injury problems. Brennan Johnson and Kulusevski are likely to share minutes, but both have the potential to return, especially when you consider the fact that they're playing Burnley. Johnson got an assist at the weekend as well. And with West Ham taking on Luton, okay, ignore the West Ham backline, but the likes of Paqueta, Ward-Prowse and Kudos are all back on the waiver radar, and all of them could have been dumped given West Ham's rather ropey form of late. They're taking on the worst team in the division in terms of XGC. Luton have an XGC of 86.83 after 36 game weeks, which means they should have conceded 86, nearly 87 goals this season. So West Ham will get lots of chances in this one. And even though they were dreadful at Chelsea, and they do give up a lot of chances themselves, at home they are not that bad. They've lost just one of their last 6. So a route into their midfield, or indeed their attack, is worth thinking about. Justin Kluivert has been doing well in recent weeks at Bournemouth. He's got 3 goals in his last 7 games for the Cherries. He had a few chances against Arsenal as well, came close with a free kick, almost hit the bar. So if you want an option from the Bournemouth midfield, you could do a lot worse than look at Justin Kluivert. And even though Aston Villa take on the might of Liverpool in game week 37, and they do look dead on their feet, Morgan Rogers is a midfielder worth thinking about as well. He's got 3 goals in 5 games, and Villa are a side that, of course, have got a lot to play for between now and the end of the season. And then we move to the forward positions, which are always tricky. But Michail Antonio, after a long injury layoff, has had a positive impact at West Ham. He got goals in game weeks 29, 30, 34 and 35, and it's Luton at home, so you would hope that he would add to that tally. Adebayo of Luton could be on the waivers in your league as well, having only just come back from injury. He scored in Luton's draw with Everton, and I'm sure, given the number of chances West Ham concede, he'll get a few opportunities as well. Bit of a gamble. Enes Unal got a goal and an assist in Bournemouth's game week 35 win over Brighton. Semenyo was expected to miss the rest of the season, but he had a miraculous return from injury this weekend. So that means that Unal is not a guaranteed starter, but with Brentford at home next week, I think he will start in that game, and they'll go a little more offensive than they did against Arsenal, play another attacker and lose one of their midfielders. And I think Unal will benefit from that team selection. And then back at Newcastle, Callum Wilson is back from injury once again. He's unlikely to start both games in the double, but given the amount of minutes Isaac has played, he may well start one, and he will certainly get minutes in both. He is more than capable, of course, of scoring in reduced minutes as well, as he showed in the win over Sheffield United in game week 35 and in his first start since game week 24 this weekend in that win over Burnley. The striking situation at Everton remains up in the air, mainly due to their woeful forwards injury problems. Beto and DCL have shared minutes, mainly when the other one's been injured. Chamiti played when neither were available, so keep an eye on the latest injury news from Goodison Park, because whoever starts at home to Sheffield United would be a wonderful 1-week punt. DCL was fit to play against Luton, and he scored, of course, but who knows what state he'll be in 7 days' time. So it's very much a watch and wait for Sean Dyche's press conference. And Chris Wood is another solid pick for game week 37, in my opinion. Given the situation that Forest still find themselves in, they do need to go to Chelsea and get a result, and then they finish the season with a home game against Wood's old club, Burnley. What's that? Narrative klaxon? I think so. Chris Wood has not scored in his last 4 games now, but we always say trust the underlying statistics. And Wood had an XG of 0.61 against Sheffield United this weekend and an XG of 0.84 against Manchester City last weekend. So surely his luck will turn soon. You would hope so if you own him. And if you don't own him, I would recommend seriously considering getting him in. So those are a few waiver options from us for this week. Hopefully they can help you win big in your draft league as we come to the climax of the league season. But that is almost it for today. Game week 37 will start on Saturday, the 11th of May, with that game between Fulham and Manchester City at Craven Cottage. The deadline for your waivers is Friday the 10th of May at 11 a.m. GMT. We will be back next Sunday night with a look back at the first half of this game week before those doubles take place in midweek, and then it will be all guns blazing as game week 38 and the end of the season approaches. Oh, I cannot wait! Now, don't forget to give us a subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. Thanks to everyone who has subscribed so far and or left a review. We're also on social media, so you can give us a follow there too. We're at FPL Draft Zone on X and on Instagram. We'd love to hear from you, so come and say hello if you've got any questions, queries, conundrums, or you just want to chat about football. It would be lovely to speak to you. And in the meantime, until next time, good luck with all things draft, and bye for now.